There's two things that stand out for me. One is, Dave and Anil, the co-founders of Workday, Dave Duffield, who co-founded PeopleSoft, and Anil, who was chairman of the board at PeopleSoft. They said, culture was their number one thing right from the start. And I knew that from PeopleSoft as well. So it's a big reason why I was excited about joining Workday. And to ensure that culture remained intact, they interviewed the first 500 employees. And I think that foundation that we have, that's why it's just a foundation. You can't live, if you're thinking of a house, you build a foundation. If it's a really good one, wonderful. But if that's all you have, that's a problem. You still, exactly. And so we do have that solid foundation. That's why I say the house we need to build on top of it is the challenge. Others aren't starting with that foundation, and their house is going to fall apart in 2 or 3 months, right? It isn't going to last. So for me, it has been an amazing education in what that next AI mindset is about. One of the founders of one of the companies we were speaking with said something along the lines of, in 3 or 4 years, I can see AI just being able to custom build an HR system for every major company out there. And 2 thoughts came to mind. The first one was the person is young, inexperienced, and it doesn't know that this is this is not a possibility. This is impossible. No, it's not going to happen. And then the second one is we need a lot more people who think that way.
First of all, thank you for listening to our EX Steps podcast, and apologies that I interrupt this episode. I promise I keep it short, but it's quite important and I need your help, please. I've been publishing these podcast conversations for 2 years now, and I see from the statistics that many of you are listening to my podcast on Spotify or Apple, and some of you are watching on YouTube. Thank you for that, and I hope you enjoyed the episode so far. I plan on making more episodes, but in order to do so, as I'm a one-man show, I would like to ask for your help, please. It doesn't cost you anything except for maybe 1 minute of your time. Please subscribe to my podcast on Apple or Spotify and subscribe to my YouTube channel. With your subscriptions, I will be able to reach more listeners, which in turn helps me get further interesting guests for you to listen to. So if you will, it's a win-win. Subscribe, and if you want, you can also leave a like or a comment, or tell me if there's anyone you want me to speak to in one of my episodes. Thank you so much for your support, and now let's start the next episode. How does winemaking connect with HR technology? And how is the oldest beer company of the world involved in HR innovation? And why do we have to thank juggling for getting a state-of-the-art HCM system? Welcome to another Employee Experience Labs podcast from the Munich Podcast studio. Employee Experience Labs podcasts are about HR tech, employee experience, shared services, and other interesting topics around HR at the workplace. We continue today our most successful season so far from the Workbook of an HR leader, where I'm talking to experienced colleagues in our field about their daily working routine and what and how they are going about the various challenges they have to face each day. I'm a tireless believer that we can all be better if we learn from each other, but there are not many opportunities to do that. Yes, there are the conferences, but how often can you attend one in a year? Yes, there are peer-to-peer connections, but how many do you manage to keep running? I'm a firm believer that we can all do a better job if we learn from each other, and so I am inviting seasoned HR experts from various fields and companies to tell us about their workday and how they go about the challenges of today. Today is a special episode. So I'm talking not really to a peer, but to someone that has influenced how we think about technology and how we experience technology today. I'm extremely excited to have the chance to have Dave Sohigian, CTO at large at Workday, as guest in my podcast. Dave and I realized that we still remember the days of HTML coding and how fast someone could get with these skills 3 decades ago, where they could live up to. Dave was one of the first hires at Workday. joined in 2010, and over the course of the decade has significantly influenced Workday, as well as the overall HCM tech ecosystem. Him and we talked about that, the early days of Workday, but also and with even more excitement about what comes next. If there wouldn't be the constraint of time, I think we would have never stopped. But don't worry, we have tried to stay on topic as well as shared one or the other anecdote. If you want to learn more, listen to Dave Sohigian, CTO at Large, Workday. Hello, Dave. How are you? It has been some time that we had the chance to talk, and I'm so excited to have you today here. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. It's great to see you as well, Volker. I was looking forward to being able to catch up.
Oh yeah, that will be great. I think you are just very early in the morning. I'm very late in the evening. So let's make the best of it. I also have a coffee. I'm not sure if you have a coffee, but I
No,
have a
no, I'm not a
coffee.
coffee drinker, but I did have some water earlier. That's enough for me in the morning.
That's enough.
You don't
Really?
want to see me on coffee. It's not a
Really?
it's just a little too much. It's
Do
just
we
too
have to
much.
go there already? You
Yeah.
know, I I am I am a I'm a heavy coffee drinker, and not only that, I do our own coffee, meaning I roast our own beans.
Oh, wow.
I
Yeah.
import the raw beans from Latin America, and then
Yeah.
I roast them fresh twice a week. Fresh coffee is the best.
Volker, this is very on brand. I'm not in the least bit surprised. I'm impressed, but not the least bit surprised. I'm based here in in Portland, Oregon, which of course is a huge coffee town, and I'm a bit of an
Yes.
outcast because of it. And so I try my best not to mention it to locals because they just won't talk to me anymore. But yeah, I've never been much of a coffee drinker.
No, my water is good as well. Well, Dave, as I said, I'm excited to have you today. But also, before we get started, who are you? Tell us a bit about yourself. Who is Dave Sohigian? What's your background? What
Yeah.
did you study? And what did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I was, as I mentioned, I live here in Portland, Oregon, but I've always been pretty much on the West Coast of the United States, starting in Northern California. Grew up there in a small town out in the vineyards in Sonoma
Oh,
County, famous
nice.
wine growing region,
Yes.
mile up a dirt road. So in the middle of nowhere, for my youth, which I really enjoyed. And got into winemaking actually.
Really?
And yeah, my degree is from a University of California at Davis, which is a famous wine school. Also studied brewing there. Um, uh, I think the school is similarly renowned to Weinstefan in Germany.
Yes.
And
Wow.
yeah, so it's that's that sort of level. And so my degree is in winemaking and brewing. I did that for almost 15 years, working here in the U.S. and Australia, and both in brewing and in winemaking. And then eventually moved over into high tech during the dot-com boom. During the dot-com boom, if you knew what HTML stood for, you could get a job, and that described me really well. So uh, I started at Microsoft, and then moved to several other companies, including several startups, and then found my way to PeopleSoft, which
Mm.
eventually led here to Workday because the co-founders of uh, PeopleSoft, is also one of them is founder at Workday, along with the chairman of the board from PeopleSoft. So that's sort of been my journey, and I've done all sorts of other things over the years in between, outside of technology. But I really do love this industry.
Dave, there's already so much. First of all, Weinstefan, literally 12 kilometers away from me.
No way. Yeah, I've
Yes.
never been. I've never been to it,
Well,
but
you're always welcome.
yeah, that's I may do that. Yeah.
Yes, no, do that. And we have a wakeboarding artificial wave around the corner. I see the board in your back
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can do that as well.
Yeah, that's a visit may be in order, Volker.
Yes, yes. I'm right at the airport.
That's awesome.
Literally, actually, it's
Yeah,
10 minutes by foot.
unbelievable. Okay, so I'm making plans already.
That's great. And the HTML, you know what? This is how I financed my studies. The dot-com boom. I had my own startup in doing nothing else than building web pages for
Yep.
small, medium-sized companies, and yeah, being somehow creative. That got me through my studies.
That's great. No, it's a great way to do it. The way I paid for my studies was juggling, street performing. I was
Wow.
a street performer for many years, including in Europe and Australia. Also even performed when I was at UC Davis. That was part of how I paid for my college education. So
That
yeah,
is cool. Next time we meet, you have to show me.
I can. Yeah,
Yeah.
certainly can. Yeah.
Good. But that's not what we are talking today. So,
Yes.
Dave, today you are CTO at large at Workday. What what does that mean? How does your daily work life look like, and how does this compare to, your successor in the actual CTO position?
Yeah. Yeah, so I formed the office of the CTO almost a decade ago, and became the global CTO, running our teams globally. And just about a year and a half ago,
Mhm.
I told my boss, "Hey, look, I'm looking to retire in about 3 years, and so I'd like to figure out the succession plan and put that into place early." So that I can enjoy the last few years of my
Yes.
working at Workday, and also put in somebody who, frankly, is better at it than me and has more energy for it. So I promoted one of the team members, Joe Wilson, to global CTO, and then stepped into the role of CTO at large, which
Mhm.
really is, I'm an individual contributor. I spend time out there with customers, with prospects, out in the market, learning
Oh,
about
great.
what Workday is, how it's being used, where we could
Yeah,
improve,
yeah.
and helping feed that information back to Workday. So I feel very fortunate both that I have this opportunity and that Workday was open to this sort of transition plan. Rather than just say no, okay, well, time to go, and I think it's been fantastic for me, also for Joe, who moved into the role of global CTO, and he's a great leader. I really feel lucky to report to him.
That's amazing. The only thing that just leaves me puzzled is like retirement in 3 years. Why do you want to retire with the mid-30s?
Yeah, so it's a year and a half now is all that's
A
left,
year and a
because yeah,
half. Oh my
yeah, so,
god.
and the mark in the road is, I'll be 60 years old, and so, it's time to sort of figure out the next thing. Not I
Yeah.
don't know what it will be, but it won't be exactly this, and there's
Yeah.
some exciting things on the horizon that I'm already, taking up. I know in Europe, it's very common for people to announce their retirement or have plans for retirement well ahead of time. It's just unusual here in the US.
Mm.
And especially in the high tech field, I think there's a lot of, oh, it's a young person's game and you don't want to talk about when you might be leaving. And I just feel, for the company, for my own mental health, also for just thinking about the transition that's coming, like
Yeah, yeah.
considering it, just rather
Yeah.
than sort of putting it off, and because it's a big change. And
Yeah.
so the second part of that is that I'm enjoying the work that I'm doing even
Mhm.
more now, because I
Mm.
know, like, I don't have that much more time of doing this, and I really
Yeah.
love the work that I've been able to do and feel privileged to do it. So I enjoy it more now, and I also look forward to the next thing.
That's amazing. But as you said, also from a succession perspective, and from a successor readiness perspective, that's just a fantastic position to be in, right?
Yeah.
To have a seamless transition there, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
So I feel
cool.
I feel like I'm blessed for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. Dave, let's talk a bit about the past.
Yeah.
You're at Workday since 2010. Workday was founded only in 2005.
That's right.
It's
Yeah,
20 years now.
we'll be 20 years old. I've been there all, March 8th, it'll be 15 years for me.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is.
But also, it was very quickly, right? From 2005 to 2010, it was like becoming the rising star, then the new kid on the playground. Can you tell us a bit about how it was back then at Workday and how the company matured or changed since then, in your view?
Yeah, there's two things that stand out for me. One is, Dave and Anil, the co-founders of Workday, Dave Duffield, who co-founded PeopleSoft, and Anil, who was chairman of the board at PeopleSoft. Um, they said, culture was their number one thing right from the
Mm.
start. And I knew that from PeopleSoft as well. So it's a big reason why I was excited about joining Workday. And to ensure that that culture remained intact, they interviewed the first 500 employees. I'm employee number
Wow.
486. So
486.
yeah,
Wow.
so I already knew Dave really well. He's
Yeah.
been a mentor to me for many years. I'll be flying down to Reno to see him later in March. I try to see him a
Nice.
couple times a year. So we knew each other well. But Anil interviewed me, and he or Dave or both, depending on the position, would interview every single
Wow.
candidate. And the reason why is because they knew that if they wanted to build an enduring culture, that if they interviewed and uh, both screened for culture fit
Mhm.
and then
Mm.
instilled that culture and said, everybody we're interviewing, you're a culture champion, that it would
Mm.
carry on at the
Mm.
organization. And that's so early days. That was, it was very evident right from the beginning. This is a company that is very driven by the culture and treating employees well, who will therefore treat customers well, and
Mm.
really instilling those values, including fun, which is one of the important ones as well. Um, so that was from early days.
Yeah.
But also at that time, the interesting thing for me, seeing the company grow from, it was, from those early days to where we are today, one
Yeah.
of the things that strikes me is that um, there were always questions that people would ask at various levels about, when are we going to do this? When are we going to have,
Mhm.
401k,
Mm.
401k
Mm.
matching?
Yeah. Yeah.
When are we, there's going to be these, our interview cycles will be different. Like when will these things change? And
Mm.
so consistently as we grew, the answer was never the typical startup of like, oh, you got to do that. Like I don't know. It was, well, we're not there yet. We're
Mhm.
preparing for that. When we hit this milestone, that's when
Yeah.
we'll do that thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just because, almost, well, certainly both founders and many of our early executive leaders had been down this road many times
Mm.
of growing
Yeah.
companies successfully. And so they had a very clear picture of what it takes to become a really large, successful company and the things
Mm.
that you need to do along the way to get there. So they didn't have to get ahead of the game. They didn't have to be behind when it came to it. So a very well understood path to success from the early days, which I've never
Right.
experienced at any other company because most
Yeah.
of them, when you're going through, especially the wild growth we were going through, everything's just chaos. Now, it's not to
Yes.
say that that wasn't happening, but
Yeah.
there was a clear vision,
Yeah.
from our leaders and many of the workers at Workday of
Yeah.
here's the path we need to go down.
Yeah.
When we get to that stage, then we'll do that next thing.
Yeah.
Now's not the time, but we can make plans for it. So
Yeah.
those are a couple things that stand out for me about Workday in terms of what makes it unique and
Yeah.
having seen it over the last 15 years.
And this is something that I have not heard or seen before anywhere either. I've seen many startups from the inside as well as from
Mhm.
interviewing the founders, and it's more like the chaos. And sometimes they make it through the chaos, and sometimes the chaos breaks them, right? But this clear plan, this clear vision, having an experienced founder, by the way,
Yep.
this is something I have not seen very often. This is unique, but you can also see it, right? It was a very, or at least it looked like. I mean, you can tell me, but it
Hmm.
looked like it was a very continuous growth and sustainable growth path that Workday had in the early days, in the early years.
Yeah, and certainly for the whole time that I've been here, that's been the case. That I think there was a little bit of a bump during the 2008, sort of things flattened out for a little bit during the economic crisis, from what I've heard. But
Mm.
outside of that, and that was very early days, obviously. Outside of that, it has been a fairly consistent, methodical approach to growing a really large company and remaining a
Yeah.
growth company in the
Yeah.
midst of that. And it's yeah, I think the market we serve is part of what demands that. Like there certainly are some startups, some crazy startups, and certainly today, given what's going on in
Yes.
AI. But most enterprises, the ones that are on the other side of the chasm and crossing the
Mm,
chasm,
mm, mm.
um, they're not going to jump on top of that. They need to know the stuff's going to work. It's going to be there for the long haul.
Yes,
It
yes,
takes care of global requirement, all those things.
yes.
And so that maturity of mindset and understanding of growth has really served Workday well because of the market we serve.
Yeah. No, absolutely. If I think about me or my peers, we could not afford going for a startup for such a important topic, not knowing, not being sure that, in 1 or 2 years from now, when you are finally live, right, you also need some time for implementation, that suddenly you might not be there anymore or be in financial trouble or,
Exactly.
whatever it is. So that is really important, and that for sure had a good part in the successful growth.
Yeah, I
From
agree.
from the business perspective to the technology,
Mm,
not only the company has matured, but also I believe technology strategy and Workday's approach. And for sure you had a good part of influence on that. Can you tell us a bit about the different phases, if you can describe any, between 2010 when you started and today when it comes to Workday and its technology approach?
yeah, so there has been a lot of consistency there as well, which is a big strength of
Yeah.
Workday when it comes to the technology.
Mhm.
And when we first started, and I know these are topics we may get into as well, it was really a monolith, and we
Mhm.
we built everything pretty much from scratch, uh, and all the data, all the business process, all the metadata was all held in one place. It's all
Mhm.
running on a single server, not for every customer, but meaning like everything that a customer was running on
Yeah.
a single server. And
Uh-huh.
obviously, as we grew, that just wasn't possible. And uh, we but many of the founding principles remained intact, and
Mhm.
especially around multi-tenant architecture, which now, of course, seems old hat. But starting with that as a principle meant
Mhm.
that the things that we needed our large customers to have, like security and being able to be certain that their data was segregated clearly
Mhm.
from other customers, things that frankly customers were paranoid about at the start. We needed
Mhm.
to figure out really solid architectural approaches to that because we were committed to things like multi-tenant
Yeah.
architecture.
Yeah.
And we have many founding principles that we set up from the beginning about how we were going to build things, all in the cloud, no VPN, multi-tenant architecture. These are all things that we started from the beginning. And although the execution on those has shifted over
Yeah.
time, we've remained really true to those principles because we
Yeah.
see that they bring so much value. Another one is all customization. We don't do customization, just
Yes.
configuration, right? So
Yeah.
these are things that we decided because we thought we had experience from prior companies of
Mhm.
these are things that long term get software companies into trouble serving enterprise customers. Let's do it differently and let's hold true to those. So, but the architecture has changed dramatically. It's unrecognizable even from probably 5 6 years ago in
Mhm.
terms of how all the data is handled, how those services run, where they run. All of those things have changed. But for us, it's about remaining true to some of those principles that we know really differentiate us in the marketplace.
And so some of those principles, Dave, that you were mentioning, like the multi-tenant approaches, is
Yep.
one of those examples. When you went for that, you were kind of the pioneers there, right?
Mm,
There was not a blueprint you could take from. When I think about your customization with a configuration
yep.
perspective, this is, you know, um, maybe I'm dating myself now as well, but I know how bad that is from the old days, right?
Yeah.
From it For me, it was SAP HCM. It once you get there, you can't get out of it, and you are stuck. It's the worst thing you can do. So
Yeah.
this to take into a new product and say like we don't go there, I get that. But many of the other decisions from an architectural perspective, you were the first ones to take them, right?
I think some. Now, I can say in our space for sure,
Yeah.
HCM financials. So, we took huge inspiration from Salesforce. Mark
Mm.
Benioff and the teams there built amazing
Yeah.
cloud multi-tenant architecture right from the start. Now,
Yeah.
CRM, it's a little different. They were more a departmental solution when Workday first arrived, right?
Yeah.
They weren't serving large
Yeah.
enterprises across
Mm.
the enterprise. They did soon after, but they weren't at that point. And nobody really was doing it in HCM.
Mm.
The same for the approach we took so there were certainly inspiration and probably in the B2C sort of
It is.
space.
It is. It is.
There's tons of companies that we've been inspired by all the consumer internet companies throughout the
Mm.
years, even back then, that we looked at, well, look, that's how they're doing it. What of that can we bring to the enterprise? So I think
Yeah.
what was novel and interesting about Workday wasn't that we were inventing every new technology. We weren't. We were adopting the latest and saying, how
Mm.
can we apply this and make it enterprise grade, make it something that enterprises can use? And there are some examples of things that are fairly unique to Workday, the way we handle metadata and abstraction, which are very technical topics, but the idea that that's how we do configuration in the product rather than customization. Everything is written as metadata, meaning describing how the application will work, and then
Yeah.
it's interpreted at the runtime to be able to display that information.
Yeah.
This means that we can create an abstraction, a separation between the technology we're using and the functionality of the
Mm.
application. So we can update the functionality, create new capabilities without having to change the technology, and vice versa, which is why I
Mhm.
say our architecture, although the principles remain intact, it looks nothing like our original architecture. And at no point have
Yeah.
we required our customers to re-platform. So
Yeah.
there's because replatforming is a nightmare. It's
It
you
is
know,
a nightmare.
it's
Yes.
just like we don't want to
Yeah.
go through it as a vendor. Like because like that's it. We risk whenever you're going to replatform as a vendor, you risk
Yeah.
losing your customer base because then
Yes.
somebody new can come in and say, well,
Yeah.
you're going to
If
have
you
to
anyway have to do
re-implement
that.
anyways. Let's go ahead and take a look at our
Yeah.
that's part of how we were
Yeah.
successful because all of our competitors went through some sort of replatforming in the
Mm.
last 20 years, and it gave us real openings into the market. And we just haven't had to do that, and I don't expect we will either. It's because of how the system is built.
Oh, Dave, this is something I want to dig a bit deeper in a few questions from now, because we are again, I think, at a very strong change point in the industry, right?
Fully
From
agree. Fully
back
agree.
then it was cloud, now it's AI. But before we get there, um, when you think about Workday today, I think you can fairly and easily say it's one of the two leading systems in spaces of HR and finance, either number one or number two, depending on which viewpoint you want to
Yep.
take. Um, if you would have to characterize Workday in the HR space, when is Workday the right system for you as a company? And when should you rather think of an alternative? Are there sizes or setups that you say like, well, that's not us. You should think about someone else, or would you say like, Workday can be the one for, regardless if you have, I don't know, 100 employees, 100,000 employees. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that. I do know historically what, our focus was from the very beginning to be capable of serving the very largest
Yeah,
companies in the world.
yeah,
So that's we wanted to build that capability in from the beginning and have that
yeah.
vision. Now, obviously, there's only so many Walmarts in the world, right? That isn't a very
Yes,
big
I was just
market.
about to say
Yeah.
you are serving the biggest.
Yeah. So there's only so many customers of that sort of scale. So that's more aspirational for making sure we have that scalability, we have the security, we meet those sort of requirements of very large, very complex organizations, and then can simplify down from there.
Mm.
And we're now serving much smaller customers. I
Mhm.
think you have to have to, and this, this is not the Workday official, but to my mind, you have to have some level of complexity you're trying to manage in
Mm.
some way or another. And that may not be the total number of employees. It may be the industry you're in. It may be the diversity of your employees, where they are geographically,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
requirements,
yeah.
something like that to really get the most out of Workday.
Mm.
If you're just a small organization in one city, things aren't changing for you. You don't expect a whole lot of growth. You've got 50 employees. Like, it's harder to argue that Workday is going to be
Mm.
the solution you want. But if you have
Mm.
aspirations of growth, if you're looking to if managing that complexity that you have as an organization around your people and your money is something that you see as a challenge today or as a growing challenge, then
Yeah.
it makes a whole lot of sense. And one of Workday's strongest markets has been startups as they
Mm.
grow. Like, there's in Silicon Valley, where
Yeah.
we're kind of based. Pleasanton is kind of close to Silicon
It's
Valley.
close.
It's
It's
yeah,
close.
it's close
Yes.
enough. Um, if you drive around Silicon Valley, it's
Yeah.
hard to find a company logo that is not a customer of Workday. And most of the large companies in the Silicon Valley are customers of Workday and have been for a
Yeah.
long time and have
Yeah.
grown up on Workday. And that's a unique capability because, again, we've built out the capabilities in terms of technology and functionality to serve the
Mm.
largest, most complex
Mm.
companies. And as you grow into being a larger and more complex company, you get the benefits of not having to start all over again, get another solution. You might
That's
turn
true.
on more modules, you might
Yeah.
turn on more capabilities in each of the modules, but you're not going to have to start all over again.
Yeah, that's definitely true, and I can also attest to that. Looking into adding another country, for example, or
Mhm.
doing an M&A, this is just something that is very comparably easily done
Yeah.
in and with
Nothing's
Workday. Yeah.
simple in this in the sort of stuff we do with this,
No,
but it is.
but it's the comparison, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Dave, Workday for a long term time had the term the power of one.
Mhm.
Um, but now I think you're being more open, on one hand when it comes to acquisitions. You made a few interesting one in the recent years, but also when it comes to connectivity and partnership alliances that I'm seeing. What is the underlying thought process behind that?
Yeah, so Power of One really, when we first talked about the founding principles, that was
Yeah,
one of the ways we would describe
yeah.
the principles that we had of having consistency for all your data, of having it all
Mhm,
in one place. And again, how that's executed on changed over time, but many of those
mhm,
principles remain intact.
mhm,
One of the
mhm.
big benefits of that is kind of, I sort of liken it a little bit to Apple and the ecosystem they built over time with the iPhone.
Mhm.
And early days, at Apple was incredibly closed, sort of, it's always described in the technical world as a walled garden was the
Yep.
term that is used for the app for Apple in general, and then even for the iPhone and iOS later.
Mhm.
And I think Workday really was that early days. There weren't,
Mm.
as you mentioned, there weren't a ton of companies out there doing the things we were doing in the way we were doing it. And we felt strongly about preserving customer satisfaction. It's always been a
Yeah,
metric we measure, we care about
yeah,
deeply. You've
yeah.
probably answered some of those surveys over the
Yes.
years personally, and we take that very seriously, 95% plus, all of that.
Mm.
And the approach that we took to making sure that remained intact was to have as much control over our customer success as possible. And
Mm.
that meant
Mm.
being really picky about the partners we did business with, being picky about both software partners and then also
Mhm.
partners that were
Implementing. Yeah.
implementing or maintaining Workday, being very, and again, no customization, right? Like, let's
Yeah.
keep you on
Yeah.
guardrails so
Mhm.
you can
Mhm.
only do so much damage to yourself if you're going to try to make something special and unique for your organization. And so, really, it was about control for a long time. And I think that served us incredibly well. It's part of
Mhm.
why there was so much trust placed in us by so many customers over the years. Um, and that was part. of the thinking of the power of one. It's like it's
Mhm.
going to be in Workday. But there was a point where you started to see there was areas we weren't going to go into, industries we weren't going to serve, applications we
Mm.
weren't going to build, or areas where we weren't going to put enough concentration for a
Yeah.
particular industry or
Yeah.
region.
Yeah.
And our customers started to say, hey, I need to be able to plug in this other piece. And we've had integration. We've done, that's not really the issue. That's been deep and early inside of Workday because
Mhm.
we've always had
Mhm.
to integrate. But it's more the idea that um, if there are going to come times where
Mhm.
we should be recommending a partner instead of Workday, even if we have a solution in that area, because it may be
Yeah.
that a partner has a better solution for that
Mhm.
industry for that particular problem. And it was only really 2 years ago that or a little it's more than 2 years ago that Carl Eschenbach joined as
Yes.
our CEO and took the reins. He has an amazing background in partnering. I won't go into in detail from VMware when they were acquired by EMC. He really understands partnering. And he said, we've built an amazing solid foundation. And this is where I say it's an analogy to Apple.
Yeah.
Apple built an incredible foundation with the
Yeah.
iPhone.
Yeah.
And then at some point, they opened up the App Store to
Yeah.
third parties. And now
Yeah.
all of a sudden, this beautifully curated walled
Yeah.
garden
Yeah.
was a foundation that others could build on. And that's how
Yeah.
I see our partner approach now. I think it's one of the biggest pivots we've done at Workday
Yeah.
is we've shifted dramatically in terms of how we work with partners, how we allow them to build on top of our platform using Workday Extend, but then also welcoming in partners through a much easier process. We, historically had a lot of restrictions and controls on
Mhm.
partners, and now
Mhm.
we're opening it up. And I think rather than if we had started with that open approach, we'd kind of have just everybody doing everything,
Yeah.
customers not sure what to pick. You could argue we waited a little too long to do it. And I might agree with you, but once we did, it's a solid
Mhm.
foundation that you can
Mhm.
count on that this is the way Workday works. If you need to do more with it, there's partners that we would recommend or work with. And
Mhm.
the risk, of course, for us is there's going to be partners that are going to screw up. They're gonna sell stuff that doesn't work or doesn't work very well. Some of that will get blamed on Workday. Carl recognizes, and I think the rest of Workday recognizes the upside for our customers is so
It's
great
much
that we're
bigger.
willing
Mhm.
to take that risk.
Yeah.
And so far, I think it's really paid off. We've got, I love it's the biggest change I've seen at Workday since I joined. That shift in that partner strategy, and I'm really excited about what it means for the future as well.
Yeah, and I have to say both things for me really make the difference, right? When I today think about why Workday and for whom it is the right solution, I always come back to you have one way of UX UA, you have one way of data. It's all in it together, and from a user experience, it's just yes, you could say I don't like the user experience, or you do it, but it is consistent across the whole stack, regardless if you are learning in talent, in recruiting, and that's important, right? Because this means the end user knows what they are getting.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I really like that you are opening it up now because, as you said, there are certain specific use cases that you either cannot or decide choose not to serve. We still have it.
Yeah.
And now there is something that we can do jointly without giving up. Because for me, it's also for, through you being more open, my tech stack is less complex
Yeah.
because you help keeping it simple, even if I put an add-on on, right? And that for me, makes a big difference. Yes, you could argue, was it too late or not? I don't know. It was a good timing.
Yeah, it is the timing that happened, and I'm excited about where we are today with it, a couple years in, and what it means for the future as well.
Yeah. Now, let's go into a bit of a different directions, pivot a bit. We always talked about Workday was the first cloud HR system in the market. It was developed with its principle in mind from the ground up, and as we said back in 2005, no other HR system or HCM system for that matter was going down that route. You were right, in that space pioneers. Cloud first was completely new developed. It was a competitive advantage, absolutely. But I think it's as easy to argue that we are today at a similar junction, right? Now it's not called cloud, it is AI.
Hmm.
And Workday today is one of those established companies that you were out competing in 2005 plus. You have more than 10,000 customers. Uh, you are no longer the new kid on the block, but there are some with an AI first mindset and development approach,
Yep.
and they could turn into a new Workday within the next 5 6 years. How how do you see this? Do you see this happening? And what would you say Workday is doing to not end up like your competitors back then when you started out first?
Yeah, so I certainly see it as a possibility. I've tried not I'm not a paranoid person, but I think that a little bit of that goes a long ways in terms
Yeah,
of the technology market. Anil often would talk about, even I remember even a decade talking about, like, he's not worried about our legacy competitors. He's worried about the small startup in a garage.
the one that
And
we
I
don't know
Yeah,
about.
and I remember at the time, I'm like, "There's there aren't any little startups." And 10 years ago, there weren't any little
Yeah,
startups that
yeah,
were doing
yeah,
it.
yeah.
But it's because there wasn't the AI revolution that's going on right
Mm,
now. And it is at those pivot points that that becomes possible. And I certainly think this is a huge transformation that's going on. It is like any hype cycle in that it's overhyped in the short term, underhyped in the
mhm.
long term.
Long term.
But and I've been through multiple hype cycles, including, like I mentioned, starting with the dot-com bubble. Um,
Yes.
the but it has, I believe, and I think, there's, this is pretty common belief in Silicon Valley, that it has the potential to impact as much as, the internet and mobile
Mm,
combined, and or perhaps multiplied. Like, it is a huge transformation of
yeah.
how we conduct our lives and do our work. So there's no question that there's startups out there who are thinking about this in an entirely new way.
Mm.
And I think it is a huge risk to Workday. And you may have seen the recent announcements that we did about agent system of record, and we'll
Yes,
probably get
yes.
into more of that. We're taking it very seriously, and I'm excited to see that as well. That
Mm,
Anil has stepped back in to take a much stronger role as the visionary, and Carl is a leader that is all about driving to the next change. So I'm
mm,
excited that we're doing that, and I think we also have a unique advantage. We're at a starting place which is very different than any of our competitors in the space, and different than any startup as well. Now, it's up to us, and I could talk more about what those advantages
yes,
are,
please,
um,
yes.
but it's up to us to make those into a successful
Yeah,
AI-driven company. And to me,
yeah,
the biggest advantages are the things we talked about at the beginning, that our architecture, the fact that all of the metadata, which is the
yeah,
information that describes the application, is metadata. So, if you want to apply AI to metadata to make sense of your own configurations, Mondelez or elsewhere, of the system, you could that potential is there. Also,
mhm,
all the data is there. And not
mm,
only your data, but the data of every customer we have. Now, of course, we can't access all of that because contractually we're not, those, but technology wise, there's no limitation there. We don't,
mhm,
there aren't on premise versions or different versions that make it technically impossible. If our
yeah,
customer says to us, hey, we want to share that data so you guys can
yeah,
use it for machine learning to make the
yeah.
application smarter and better, there's no
And many
technical barrier to
customers
this.
are signing up for
Yeah,
that actually,
thousands
yeah,
of them have signed up
yeah.
for it. So those are the foundation that give us a unique advantage. That all of the business processes are encoded
Mm-hmm.
as metadata in the system. All the data is consistent across there. All the security is applied in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things are really challenging to build after the fact. In fact, in many cases, impossible.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it's up to Workday to say, okay, we've got that incredible gold mine of a foundation. Can we build these AI first or AI driven applications? And I'm getting,
Yes.
in the work I'm doing, I'm getting to see a lot of those from startups. So I certainly have an impression of really more than anything, the mindset shift that
Yes.
Workday needs to make internally.
Yeah.
And I can see it
Yeah.
going on. And that's what those
It's a
announcements
big
were
one.
about, a
Mm-hmm.
mindset shift that is happening at Workday. And so it's an exciting time, a risky time though too, right? Like it's not, this really is a juncture where Workday will find out whether Workday is 10, 15, 20 years from now, just another company that people have their legacy stuff running on, or really keeping up with the latest innovations and seen as during that whole time a growth company. And I think both are future possibilities, and it's up to us right now to ensure that
Yeah.
we're one of those growth companies.
Yeah. I was just thinking, will you become a Microsoft that is very stable through many big shifts in the industry? Or maybe it's too early to say so, but or Intel, that really did not take the right exit in this transformation. But I, Dave, I hear you on the data, and I agree
Yep.
with you on
Yep.
the data. What what I would question though are the processes, the business processes, and how you have it set up. Right? When I think about a few years back, until very recently, the strengths of Workday was the clear and standardized business
Yeah.
processes. They're a backbone of the solution. With AI, I think you need to restart from the beginning, right? What I see is many companies doing just patching on AI on their existing solution,
Yep.
and say like, "Hey, we are AI now." Um, nice, probably will be good for another 2 3 months, but it's not AI first. So
Yep.
how do you get to an AI first product when it comes to the functionality, when it comes to how you think about getting HR transactions done?
Yeah. Yeah. So I fully agree. And I think that foundation that we have, that's why it's just a foundation. You can't live if you're thinking of a house. You build a foundation.
Yeah.
If it's a really good one, wonderful. But if that's all you have, it's that's a problem.
Well,
You
it's
still
cold and wet.
exactly, exactly. And so we do have that solid foundation. That's why I say the house
Mm,
we need to build on top of it is the challenge. Others aren't starting with that foundation, and their house is going to fall apart in 2 or 3 months, right? It isn't
mm,
going to last. So again, it's up to us to do that. And I think there are some advantages that we have also in terms of just the amount of subject matter expertise we have around how processes work today.
mm,
One of the ways to look at it, and we've talked about this in our AI strategy, is that there's places where we're going to assist with processes that already exist, and then we can go further than that and automate some of those
mhm,
processes.
mhm,
But
mhm,
then the final piece is where we really put both of those together and say we're going to truly transform
mhm,
the approach that you're taking, and we're going to need to balance. Some customers are going to say, "Look, I don't want to transform anything. I just need to be a little better, a little faster, faster search. I need this process to go smoother." But we're seeing that as a continuum. And you look at our acquisition of Hired Score for the
yeah,
recruiting side, they're a great example of one of those that truly works towards transformation
transform.
with the
Yes,
recruiting agent
yes.
functionality. That's what we're aiming for, and that's the
Mm,
transformation we're making inside the company to say, always be questioning. Great, you can assist and you can accelerate, but transformation is the goal.
yep.
And this is a heavy lift for us, but it's also for our customers to recognize that there are processes that it won't be about them going faster. It'll be about those processes not existing anymore.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
just go away
Yeah.
entirely.
Yeah.
And we believe that, some of the brilliant minds came to us from HiredScore have mapped out this process of it's a continuum that helps us internally understand where are the spots where we can speed things up, where are the places where we can eliminate steps, and then from that,
Mm.
just carry that to the next stage of that process is completely transformed, doesn't
Mm.
exist in the way it did in the past. And that's where we see AI and especially agents playing a huge
Mm.
role. And I think there's massive possibilities for this, especially with the stuff that's going on now with AI reasoning and
Mm.
agentic platforms, all the new buzzwords. The buzzwords they drive me crazy, they're buzzwords until they're I can't
Until
stand.
they have an impact.
Right, until I'm fine with jargon. Jargon is about,
Mm.
shorthand to describe something between experts. I'm fine with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Buzzwords and corporate bull speak are when you use those same things for marketing. So,
Mhm.
agents right now is buzzword because it's not really well defined
Yeah.
what it is, but if you say this type of agent, it's like, okay, now we're talking jargon because that's an actual thing. That's
Yeah.
something that will dramatically change how people do their work. That's a
Yeah.
different thing. And we're in the middle of a hype cycle, so it's still, it's still fuzzy. But I think there's huge possibilities there. And again, Workday has the foundation, and now we
Yeah.
have both the motivation and making the shift in mindset to say this is really where the future is for companies we're serving.
Yeah. And I think this is, you just said mindset, and it reminds me of what you said early on, right? When the founders of Workday hired for culture, you could argue, the culture mindset is not too far from each other. And
Yep.
what I always say is, don't hire for capability, because capability is something you can build.
Yeah.
Hire for mindset. And now the question then is, has this sufficiently transpired, from the first 500 into
Yeah.
the uh, other thousands of employees, so that, the capability can be switched, because you need very different skills tomorrow to build that. Uh, and is the mindset strong enough so that you can actually go there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I think it is that comes down to leadership, and I have a
Yeah.
great deal of confidence in Anil and in Carl, we've made some leadership changes recently as
Mhm,
well.
mhm, mhm.
I think we can get there. Yeah, I think we can
And
get
how can
there.
you decide to leave at such an exciting time?
Well,
Honestly, Dave, it's the most exciting time in
it
in
is.
HR history.
It is. No, I think it is. We'll see what's next. Who
Yeah,
knows? But
exactly, exactly.
I think, uh, yeah, it's an exciting time to
Yeah.
be part of it too, and to be talking with customers, be talking with prospective customers, talking with the
Mm,
market, and now working with the Workday Ventures team as well.
mm.
For me, that's why I've been so enthusiastic over the last year and a half. It's like feels like this real pivot point, and it's
It
really
is.
cool to be part of it.
It is so cool. I every morning I love getting up and starting it again. This is just cool. Before we go, I want to go to Workday Ventures as well, but before we go there, there's one other thing that you just said where I want to pick a bit deeper. Um, you said, some customers might not be up for the complete transformation.
Mm.
Some are. Um, how do you think about, keeping the soul within one platform, within one
Yeah,
code
yeah.
set? Or will there be a point where you as a Workday customer have to decide, do you want to, I'm making it a bit black and white, right?
Yep,
Do you
yep.
want to continue on the legacy platform, or do you want to go into the AI future? This
Mm.
it's a difficult one, right? Because we talked about it. You have more than 10,000 customers.
Yep.
They're all from very different industries and risk sets, right? And you only have the choice of either taking them all with you because there is only
Yeah.
one version of Workday, or to make a fork, right?
Yeah, so I think about it a little differently, and it's hard to know if this is the direction we'll end up going. But um, the what we've announced recently about agents and building out both an agents internally inside of
Mhm.
Workday that can take actions, and by agents in general, let's say we mean things that can do actions, take
Mhm.
actions. So AI that can take actions inside of a system across systems, and be able to, whether a human in the loop or automating a process fully. That's the idea of what we're talking about, because again,
Mhm.
agents means a lot of different things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, so I see that as a continuum again of, are you doing this work manually? Are you checking every action that is taken? Are you automating pieces of that? It needs to be a continuum for our customers.
Yeah.
um, the the other side of that is the agent system of record, which I think is a
Mhm.
really exciting idea, which is
Yes.
basically what you're describing, because it's not just HR anymore, right? You can start saying it's processes across the organization. Sure, they touch HR, but the organization functions as a unit. And of course, I
Mhm.
include finance. I know this is less true for you, but for us, of course, for Workday, finance, so people and money are both
Yeah.
critical pieces of your organization,
Yeah.
but they're far
Yeah.
from everything.
Yeah.
And the idea with the agent system of record is, as all of these agents start to develop, whether they're Workday agents, external agents, you're going to need to start managing them, start
Yeah.
needing to
Like
understand
a workforce to manage.
exactly. And that's the metaphor we function in, is a workforce, people doing work. And what
Mhm.
we're looking to do with the agent system of record, which I think is brilliant, is take that metaphor and say all the systems that we built to do that, we have to extend beyond what we've done, because there's things that agents do, like
Yeah.
work 24/7, that humans
Yeah.
don't, right? And
Yes.
many other things that are unique
Yeah.
about agents. So adapting the system to be able to track and manage the performance of, and help with
Mhm.
integration between all of these, rather than workers, agents. And
Mhm.
so I think that will help in that process, that continuum, because there's certainly going to be, we have ventures investments we've done in companies that are all about automation from sort of the RPA age.
Mhm.
Now they're
Mhm.
building agents. So those
Mhm.
kind of act as workers. Now, is that transforming your organization? Well, if you have enough of those working together, then
Yeah.
it is. Now it's
It
no
is.
longer
Yeah.
just an automation. We're conducting work in a very
Yeah.
different way. So I think it
Yeah.
will be less of an either or. Either you're the AI
Yeah.
version, or you're the, cloud traditional
Yeah.
version.
Yeah.
They're going to be working in conjunction for a long time.
I'm looking forward just to see that. This is why I love being here, right? Because every day there's something new, and every day you can see so much happening where we probably in a year or 2 or 3 years from now will say like, wow, what kind of speed, what kind of innovation did we do? So I'm looking forward, and I do hope that it all happens without replatforming. So
Yeah.
that would be the easiest.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a nightmare.
Yeah. Platform,
But
no fun.
let's no, it's not. Let's pivot to one last time, Dave, to Workday
Yeah.
Ventures. Um, I'm not sure how well known it is, but as soon as I got to know about it, I was really curious. Can you tell us a bit about what Workday Ventures is and how it was founded and what your role there is?
Yeah, so Workday Ventures has been around for several years, and it's a $500 million corporate venture capital fund.
Mhm.
So we have it's a separate fund where we have a few investors that I have the good fortune of working with, who look for opportunities to help startups. And typically, I don't know how public. I'm not a spokesperson for ventures, so I'll be careful with my words. But we do
Yes. Yes.
we do tend to be earlier stage investments in
Mhm.
systems and companies that are somehow adjacent to what Workday does. Either their
Mhm.
systems we would use to build capabilities at Workday, or our customers would use that would be integrated with Workday,
Mhm. Mhm.
or to
Mhm.
build functions on that are related to Workday. Um, and the, we're not the only corporate venture out there, right? There is sort of a pattern for this. Our focus tends to be on companies where we see a potential to partner with
Yeah.
for Workday to use internally to build to build our own systems, or to
Yeah.
potentially eventually acquire as well.
Mhm.
And the goal is both, a profitable venture. Certainly, we don't want the investments to lose money, but
Nope.
really a huge priority is on us constantly keeping current on what's out there. What are people
Yeah.
doing? How are they? What are the systems they're building? How are they approaching it? And the thing that we bring to the table for our portfolio companies is access to the Workday Partner Network. Um, for Workday, it can also be this internal education for our
Yeah.
folks of like, oh,
Yeah.
here's how they're
Yeah.
doing it, and we've had some really successful ones. We have some great. We've got a fantastic portfolio of companies, and we talk to them on a regular basis. It's part of the efforts we make, and we make connections inside of Workday. And about 6 months ago, I went and spoke to one of our investors at Workday Ventures and said, hey, I've got this new role. I'm an individual contributor. I've got a little more time on my hands if I need it. I've got a boss who is very open to me doing other things. Could I do what's called a gig, which is a function inside of Workday, the talent marketplace? Do some work alongside ventures to just help out the team with the investments and apply what I know and learn a lot at the same time. And it has been an amazing time to be able to have these insights. I think I've probably been on calls with, in that time, 40, 50, 60 different companies that we've looked at investing in, also
Yeah.
portfolio companies as well
Yeah.
that are giving updates on where they sit. Some tons of names you've heard of, a bunch you probably never have because they're just these tiny startups, 5, 10 person startups just
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
started. And for me, it has been an amazing education in what that
Yeah.
next AI mindset is about.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the, it is very clear to me. One of the founders of one of the companies we were speaking with said something along the lines of, in 3 or 4 years, I can see AI just being able to custom build an HR system for everybody for every major company out there. And two thoughts came to mind. The first one was the person was young, inexperienced, and there's it doesn't know that this is not a possibility. This is
It's
impossible.
kinda complex, yeah.
No, it's not going to happen. And then the second one is we need a lot more people who think that way.
We
Um,
have that
Right?
mindset.
Exactly.
Mhm.
How does that I mean, I'm not saying that
Yes.
becomes possible, but how does something
No.
else become possible? It's
But if you
when you
exactly.
remove that limitation. Oh, you don't know how
Yes.
complex it is. You don't know how
Yes.
difficult the global compliance is. You've never dealt with a works
Yeah.
council in Germany. Like so,
Ah!
so
Oh.
sorry, that's a little close to home, I know. But but, and that's the exciting piece, and the cool thing is that now I get to spend my days talking to CIOs who are often like, "Is this all hype?" And, like, "Is this
Mhm.
gonna matter?" And then with startups where I'm hearing from them,
Fully
like,
embracing.
where they're fully embracing it.
Yeah.
And I've seen some amazing things. Some of these startups are doing some amazing things. Will they be
Yeah.
successful in the enterprise space? I don't know, but there are some impressive capabilities
Yeah.
that are being developed that that eventually will fundamentally change how software works. This
Yeah.
idea of, instead of software as a service, it's services as software. I don't know if you've heard this phrase, but the idea that the market that is available once AI is doing, through agents or something
Yeah.
similar,
Yeah.
the work of
Hmm.
people. Well, now you've got software that is
Mhm.
cre- uh, over taking over services that were provided. So that's the
Okay.
idea: is
Yeah.
software instead of software as a service, services as
Services to
software,
software.
and the market
Yeah,
there is,
yeah,
trillions instead of
yeah.
just, instead of a
Brilliant.
$650 billion market of software, it's, a $10 trillion market of services that are being provided. So it
Amazing.
it's a pretty cool opportunity, and it's certainly been a big eye opener for me, and is part of the reason why I'm so passionate about the mindset shift that we're making
Hmm.
at Workday, is because one of the things I recognized really early on talking to these folks is I had sort of been in my own silo, even though I was out talking with CIOs all the time, and I'd been
It's a
in
different world.
the Workday silo of here's how we're doing AI, and we've been doing it for a decade, and I'm
Yeah,
really impressed with what we've been able to do. But then when
yeah,
I opened up the blinders and heard from all these other, I'm like,
yeah,
wow, there's a big world
yeah,
out there, and it's
yeah.
really cool to see that Workday is moving down that path
Embracing that.
of
Mm.
opening the doors up and saying
Yeah.
there's a lot more that we need to be able to do to keep to remain relevant.
Dave, there are a million things I would love to unpick with you, but I also have to be careful of your time. We are already talking. I mean, you know, when you're fun, time flies.
Yeah, no, I
But
agree.
let me let me come to the last questions maybe. When you think about AI, and when you think about AI or Gen AI, and let's say 5 years from now, what will it mean for a business, and what will it mean for employees?
Yeah, I don't know if I know the answer to that. I think the things are moving so quickly, and when you hear futurists talking, you have to look at what company they come from to 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 know why they said that thing. Because I shouldn't say
Yes.
much more, but you know my point. Um, I think it
Yes.
is, I think we are at a real pivot point,
Mm.
and eh, in Silicon Valley, we talk about disruption as if it's just a positive. Disruption isn't for people that are being disrupted. It's not a positive at all. Like you
What?
had, like you were doing your thing, and then somebody else comes along and tells you, no, you
I
can't
ca
do it that way anymore. So,
Yes.
so I think it's going to have a huge impact. I think it will. We've already seen just how the companies that have grown from nothing into to massive multi-billion-dollar enterprises overnight. Um, and I think there'll be huge changes in terms of the way people work. Um, but very much like the internet revolution,
Hmm.
it'll be kind of insidious how it happens. It'll just pick away at things, and like 5 years from now, you'll be doing a job and you're like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't realize that job never existed before."
Yes.
Like
Yes.
I don't think it will be, so I don't know. Mostly the answer is I don't know, but I'm curious to see. Maybe from the sidelines,
Yeah.
maybe from in some other capacity though.
It will definitely be tremendously interesting. And the more this is the question that I ask almost every one of my
Yeah.
guests. And the more I ask this question and the further time goes, I'm thinking maybe 5 years is just too far. We don't even know what's in 1 year or 2 years from now, right? Because currently the speed is so enormous. It's fascinating.
Yeah, in retrospect, I mean, when you talk about that time that I was saying, the dot-com revolution, where just knowing
Hmm.
what HTML stood for, looking back at it, it doesn't seem like it was that big a deal or things were changing that fast. So in the rearview mirror, it's sort of obvious, but at the time, boy, it was crazy,
Yes,
and
it was. It
predicting what
was.
was next was near impossible. Um,
Yeah.
so I think we're at that similar sort of pivot point,
Mhm.
and there will be massive changes. I don't
Yes,
think
it
that's
prob
I'm that's not much of a prediction I'm making there, but
Well, um, it makes sense to me. I think the only prediction that I would make on top of that is to say probably it will all hit faster than back then because everything is always faster.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Mm. Dave, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
Thank you for the great conversation. I really enjoyed it. Um, Wishing you a fantastic rest of your day and catch you soon.
awesome. Great to see you, Volker. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.